as Senator Ted Stevens so aptly explained to us or demonstrated, this is not necessarily an easy thing to explain. So I'd like you to take 1 minute and try it yourself. I'd like you to write down how you would answer the following question. What is the internet? Pause the video now. When you're done with your definition, you can start it back up again. Now that you have your definition, whatever that definition might be, I'd like you to read over it again. Okay, a lot of people define the internet a lot of different ways, but I'd like you to think about your definition, think about your conception of what the internet is right now at the beginning of this course. Is it a really concrete definition? Does it describe something technical, something technological, something that you could touch, something that you could see? Or is it very theoretical? Is it something that exists out there but is harder to actually define? Something about information, something about communication, something about interactivity. What is it for you? If we think about how we conceptualize the internet, something that we often take for granted, something that we use, most of us use every single day, it really affects, or our conception of it is affected by the way that we have heard people talk about it. Ted Stevens thinks about it from a very political standpoint and clearly doesn't use it in a very practical way, at least not back in 2006 when that video was made. What we can really think about for us moving forward is that there are a lot of things that people assume about the internet that is not necessarily true, is not necessarily accurate. First, many people assume that we all have it, right? That it exists everywhere, and that has to do with what many people refer to as the digital divide, the distinction between those who have internet access and those who don't. Historically, there was a huge breakdown between those who had internet access and those who didn't. Today in the United States, there are still a good portion of people that don't have internet, surprisingly. But the bigger breakdown is the difference between those people who have high-speed broadband internet and those people who don't. In the United States, that difference between broadband users and that old-school dial-up use is getting smaller and smaller, but in many parts of the world that is still huge. And this difference between who has it and who does not is clearly something that still exists and will be existing for a long period of time. So there's no truth to the fact that we all have it. Second, there's this belief that it is everywhere. Some people talk about the cloud or cloud computing, and that this internet sort of exists around us all the time. And that's simply not true. Clearly there are certain places that have better internet access, and ultimately all of our data that's being sent through Wi-Fi and all over the place is something that exists on servers somewhere, and it's in a real physical place. Third, it will continually make it easier to find information. We'll talk about this a lot over the course of the modules moving forward, but it's important to note that this is simply not true. It's not always easier to find information, even though there is more information online. So we'll talk much more about this. And finally, that it helps democracy, that it is democratic in some way. This is a debate that's been going on for almost 2 decades now, and it's something that we will really spend a lot of time focusing on today. For now, we'll simply say that it is very debatable whether the internet helps democracy or hurts it. Now that we've talked about how difficult the internet is to actually define and explain, and we've talked about some of the assumptions that people have about the internet that may or may not actually be true, it's important to start actually diving into what the internet actually is in reality. And while some people have a conception of the internet as being a very theoretical concept, at the same time the internet is a very real, tangible thing. And the best way to start our discussion of what this tangible thing actually is, we're going to stop our interaction now and take a look at a TED Talk video by Andrew Blum, who is the author of a book called Tubes, who's looking at the very physical, very real internet and how it exists around the world.